Hello everybody, it's Jenn, Scrapbena Creations. Today I am making some masculine cards using the November Flavor of the Month card kit. So this is one of the 4 collections that comes in the base kit, and I didn't have a chance to play with it because Canada had a national postal strike in November, which delayed multiple of my design team projects. So I'm getting a chance to play with it now. So I'm just showing you what comes in this collection. This is exclusive paper by Scrapping for Less. There's some embellishments in the collection. There's some sequins and then some arrows from Tim Holtz and some enamel dots. I won't be using any of the embellishments today to make my cards. I wanted to keep them very clean and simple and masculine. So I'm going to color the hat, the bow tie, and the tie in the same sort of colors. I'm using warm grays. I felt like this matched the gray in the pattern paper really well. So I'm using W5, W3, and W1, and just a hint of the W00 in the middle. I colored all of the hats and bow ties and stuff that I'm using on all 3 cards the same color. So I'm just going to show you going through one. So for the hat, I wanted to make it look rounded, so I had the darkest edges to the side, and then underneath the piece of ribbon or whatever you would call the area on the hat that has a little bit of decorative edge there. For the bow tie, I wanted it to be darkest by where it's tied there on the inside, and then on the outer side to make it look a bit rounded. Now, the first time I colored the bow tie here, I did darker colors on both sides. When I colored this the next time, I just did darker to the top sides of the stripes and not on the bottom, and I thought that that looked a bit better. So for the blues, I'm using B04, B02, and B00. This gives it a nice pop of color, and again, it matches really well with the pretty bright blue that is in the paper pad or the pieces of paper. So I'm using the darkest colors again on the edges, and for the bow tie, I'm just using, I believe, the 2 darkest colors. I'm not going to worry about a third color on those little polka dots. I really love the blue and the warm gray color combination together. So I'm just going to finish that up quickly, and then we will jump into making the cards. So I did fussy cut out those images, super simple. I'm using an MFT, it's called the Big Birthday die, and I cut it out of some of the black cardstock. The cardstock does have a shine coating to it, which I really love. So I'm just going to pop out all of these letters here, and then I'm going to cut down a piece of paper. I think I cut it 5 by 5 if I'm not mistaken, just to give me some wiggle room so I can cut down my panel to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 later. But I didn't want to have to worry about trying to get this lined up perfectly in the center. So I'm going to use the cut out part here as a guide for where to place my letters. Just using some full post-it note paper there to hold down that piece of paper in one spot. I'm going to add some liquid glue here, and then I'm going to simply add in my letters. So this is really easy, fun way to kind of create some interest on your card. Now, if you wanted to have the letters really popping off the page, you can do more than one layer. I would just use some simple black cardstock, cut out a couple layers, and then add this really pretty paper from the kit on the top. So now I'm just carefully peeling this away because I wasn't sure if some of the liquid glue seeped out. And now I have my happy birthday on this card panel here. So I'm just using a stamp block just to make sure those are good and adhered down. And then I'm going to use the sentiment, "Hey Handsome." So it'll read, "Hey Handsome, happy birthday." Originally, when I was thinking about doing this card, I wanted the hat and stuff to kind of hang off the words, but because this letter die or alpha die is so big, it didn't quite work out the way that I'd hoped. So you'll see me here, I'm going to play around with positioning those elements for quite a while. So I'm just stamping this with my VersaFine, came out perfectly on the first stamp. And here's where I'm trying to play around with where I want these images. And I realized after that it would have been fun to use the tie as one of the letters. I could have used it as the I or even the T. That was kind of an afterthought. So I left this in because I just wanted to show you that there's many ways that you could decorate this card panel. I only end up using the bow tie in the end. I'm using this gorgeous argyle paper here, and I'm only going to use the outer piece, so I wanted to cut the inside piece out because I love this paper so much I didn't want to waste it. So I'm going to adhere this down to my card base. I make my card bases out of 110-pound cardstock. I just get the Recollection brand at Michael's with a coupon. So this panel will lay over top of that argyle panel, which I absolutely love. I can use my ATG adhesive here just to make sure it sticks permanently to the card base. I'm going to try to line that up and center it as much as possible. So again, here I'm like, I really want to get all three of these on this card, but it wasn't working the way I had envisioned it in my head, and that's okay. So I end up playing around with this bow tie, and this is where I end up adhering it, even though I'm moving it around a bit more to see what I want to do. But I do end up putting it there. So I'll adhere that on with some liquid glue, and then I'm going to add the hat and the bow tie to the inside of the card. I wanted to make some masculine cards that had no fuss or muss to them, were just very clean, simple, and appropriate to give to any male in your life. So added those to the inside. I'm kind of thinking here, do I want to do anything else? But I thought I would leave that for now. So there's card number 1 complete. We'll move on to card number 2. I'm just using some stitched rectangle dies from Lawn Fawn to cut out a couple other panels. So this is the inside panel that I cut out from card number 1. And then I have a stitched oval die here, and I just cut that out of some cardstock. I kept this to a very kind of monochromatic, not really monochromatic because that's one color, but I guess it's monochromatic because gray isn't really considered a color. So I really kept it to the blues. I didn't use any of the other pattern paper that had other colors on it. So for this one, I'm just using the hat and the bow tie, and I'm going to stamp the Hey Handsome in the center of that, which I think is really cute. I think I used the Hey Handsome on all 3 of the cards. That was my favorite sentiment out of that stamp set, and the one that I thought fit best for people in my life. So this could be a happy birthday card, it could be a thank you card, it could be any kind of card depending on what you stamp on the inside. So I'm just going to adhere this down to my card base. Love how clean and simple and masculine that is. So there's card number 2. I'm going to leave the inside blank for now until I know what I want to use it for. So this card didn't quite turn out the way that I had wanted it to. So I wanted to use this stitched border die by MFT. And what happened was I did the stitched border, and then I used a stitched rectangle die to create the stitched edging around it for my panel. And it shifted. I didn't use any tape or anything. And it shifted when I put it through the die cut machine, so it cut it off on a weird angle. So I haven't done the stitched panel yet here. I'm using a little bit of that black paper, and I cut that down to a very thin stripe. So my original plan was to use this gray paper on the bottom of the card and then have this black stripe, and then using another piece of that argyle paper, which was my favorite. As you can tell, I used it on all 3 cards. This would make a really nice gift set too if you knew someone who needed some masculine cards. So here's where I'm going to use the rectangle die. I'm just grabbing it here. And I'm going to cut it. And that would have been perfect if it hadn't moved. But then it moved and it looks a little wonky. But I didn't want to start over. So after that, I did not like the gray paper. So I'm just going to simply adhere that right snug to the little black piece of paper that I used. So this card, as well as the other ones, have a lot of white space. So I just cut out a smaller rectangle here with some Recollections 110-pound cardstock. I'm going to use that as my focal panel. I'm going to adhere down this argyle paper. I would have liked it so that the upper edge and where it comes back down on the right-hand side was over a little bit more, but that's okay. So I'm going to use the Hey Handsome stamp again, and I'm going to stamp that right above the argyle paper. And then I'm going to figure out how I want to decorate the rest of the card. So I thought I would use all 3 of the images. I'm just going to add this focal panel down here onto the card base first before I go any further, making sure I get that as lined up and as centered as possible. Sometimes it's hard to see when you're filming and not get your head in the way. So here's where I'm trying to figure out, do I want to use all 3 of these? And looking at it back on the film, I do actually like it with all 3 of the elements, but when I was doing it, it didn't look right. So I would encourage you, if you wanted to try something like this, to use all 3 elements. I thought I'd bring some of that black paper in again. So I cut out a stitched oval. And then I thought I really liked the tie just kind of floating up there on its own. So this would be a very white card to do it like that. And then afterwards I thought, I don't really like that. So I'm going to use a smaller stitched oval to back that tie onto. And I had a little bit of trouble trying to get that on straight. And then I'm going to adhere that down. And you could pop any of these elements up on some foam adhesive. As I said, just wanted them nice and flat and clean and simple. So now that black oval ties in with the black stripe, and that is card number 3 complete. So I hope you enjoyed these masculine cards today, and they might inspire you to create some of your own clean and simple masculine cards. There are still some of the November Flavor of the Month card kits left. I will link the products below. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you soon in another video.